Hello, hello. Hey, She Army, and welcome to the Simply She Podcast Live. I'm your host, Crystal Renee, and today we're going to be discussing email marketing magic. Since there is no pause, no rewind, this is live. We are definitely unfiltered here on the Simply She Podcast, and we want audience participation. So, first things first, make sure that you have allowed StreamYard access so that you can leave comments under your name. You can revoke access at any time. But if you don't do that, then we can't see who you are. But still, again, feel free to ask questions and leave comments. We love those. So don't be shy. I'm a huge believer in having your email list. It is, in my opinion, your number one asset when it comes to building your business. And so I tell people to start early when it comes to building their email list, especially if they're going to be having an online business, because that is really your way to stay in contact with folks outside of social media. So we have a guest expert here today, and let me just tell you a little bit about who she is. Love your business, but hate dealing with your email marketing platform. Bev Feldman is a marketing technology consultant at Your Personal Tech Fairy. She helps heart centered coaches and solopreneurs to make sure the right emails go out to the right people at the right time on ConvertKit so that you can build trust with your subscribers. Bev loves geeking out on technology, getting online platforms to fit together like a puzzle so that you can nurture relationships through email while you focus your time and energy on the parts of the business that light you up. So, welcome, Bev, to the show.
Thanks for having me, Crystal.
Thanks so much. I really appreciate you coming on. So, just tell the listeners a little bit more about you and how you got started in business.
Yeah, so I'm a jewelry designer and metalsmith turned tech nerd. So my business journey started about a decade ago. I started a jewelry business and I knew nothing about running a business. I was just like, I'll start an Etsy shop and figure it out as I go. And along the way, I started to learn about marketing because it's not something I knew anything about. But like you talked about in that intro, I realized very early on that email marketing was really important. And I remember telling all my friends that I met through doing these in-person shows where I'd sell jewelry about, oh, do you have an email list? You should have an email list. Like everyone I knew who was in the handmade crafty world, I was like, make sure you have a list. And I didn't really know what I was doing with this list. I think I'd collect email addresses and then I'd send a follow-up email after a show to be like, hey, thanks again for signing up. Here's who I am and here's how we met. And yeah, it's over time I would grow that list. And I realized at some point that I would meet people at these shows and they might not have bought something while they were at the show, but months or even a year down the line, they would buy something from me. And it was just like, this is amazing. I was just getting proof that how important having that list was. But I ultimately, for a variety of reasons, decided I didn't want to do that business anymore. And I pivoted it into teaching people jewelry making. Thanks to Pinterest, I somehow continued to get a ton of traffic to this website, this not Your Personal Tech Fairy, but my former business that I put very little effort into. So I figured from all the years of at that point, I'd learned about email marketing and digital products and passive income. I kind of figured out that I would teach people jewelry making. So I created some digital products. And that's just kind of on autopilot. It's more of a side hustle at this point. I wouldn't say it's even fully a business, but periodically get a notification from PayPal that someone purchased something, and I'm like, great, like I did all the work, and here's I'm getting paid for it. It's amazing. But I was trying to figure out last year what it is I wanted to do, and I've done some freelance content marketing, and it was just like I didn't love it. Didn't light a fire under me. It wasn't like I'd wake up in the morning being like, yes, I get to write a blog post for somebody. But at some point, I realized that I had this skill. Like I love the tech part of email marketing. And I don't necessarily enjoy writing the emails, but I love figuring out the tech. To me, it's like a puzzle. And as I was figuring out in 2020 what it is I wanted to do next, I finally had this light bulb moment of like, oh, like, this is what I should be doing. I should be helping other business owners with their email marketing automations, like getting the tech set up. Because I think there's a lot of people who recognize how important email marketing is, but get really bogged down by the tech and figuring that out. And it kind of stops them from taking the next step with getting their email marketing set up.
Yeah, I definitely agree. A lot of my clients, they like, when I say, do you have an email list? It's like, well, I don't know anything about setting that up. Who should I go with? There's all these questions. As a business coach, I just, I'm not going to necessarily have one set email provider for folks, but just telling them to do their research and see what works best for their business. Because there's definitely, sometimes there's specialized providers for your industry. And so those are like cool things to learn about. But I definitely agree that people do get bogged down by the tech. And like once they realize like there's this whole system, I was like a system in the interwebs that, that they have to go through. But excuse me, you've kind of told us a little bit about why email marketing is important. Anything you want to add to that? Like, why do you really feel like it's like so key to have an email list and do email marketing?
Yeah, I think that's such an important question. So I think, first of all, there's so many social media platforms that come and go. Like I, for example, a while ago got into Periscope. And I'm not sure how many of you like are familiar with Periscope, and there's a good reason. I don't even know, it may still exist, but no one really uses it. So while there are, certain social media platforms that are kind of here to stay, I think at this point we come to realize that like Facebook and Instagram, they're not going anywhere anytime soon. But there's ones that ebb and flow. So if you invest all this time and energy for one thing on a platform and then it stops being the thing, then what?
Yeah.
Like you've kind of lost that. Yeah. And then the other thing is, well, social media can be a really great way to build up brand awareness and to build connections. You don't own that information. And if you do something, you violate some policy on Facebook or Instagram, and they kick you off for a day, a week, indefinitely, then what? Then you've lost your entire customer base. Yep. Versus if you have an email list, that's your information. So you can take that with you. If you pick a provider, an email platform, and decide you don't want it, you still own that. You can take that information and move it elsewhere. So you always have that. So, and the other thing is, you're not at the mercy of people's, or you're not at the mercy of what's called the algorithms, which are constantly changing. You are always going to show up in someone's inbox. Right. Now, whether or not someone opens your email is a whole other story, but at the very least, they're going to see you in their inbox versus they may or may not even see you in their Instagram feed, or if you're looking at this, stories, like you may not show up. So email you're guaranteed for people to receive that information. Social media, you never know.
Exactly. Well said. Well said. All points that I preach.
Yes.
So with that, what are some common mistakes that you see entrepreneurs make when it comes to email marketing?
Yeah. So I guess the biggest mistake would be just never emailing your list. I think a lot of us, and I've been there myself, worry about annoying people on our list. Well, if I send an email, people are going to unsubscribe, or they're not, what if I have nothing to say? And I look at it that I like when I see unsubscribers, because it means they weren't the right fit. Right. And I want to keep a healthy and engaged list of people in my email platform. So if someone signs up for my freebie and they decide, we're not a good fit and unsubscribe, great. I'm not going to necessarily convince them by showing up in their inbox over and over again. So I think it's fine for people to unsubscribe. And I think, so going back to like, what is the biggest mistake? It's just, I think putting all these fears almost in our head about what it means to email people, and then having that stop us from actually using our email list. So I think that would probably be the biggest mistake, is just not emailing people.
Right. I agree. It's like, I don't want to bother people. That's what I hear a lot about too. I'm like, you're not bothering them. They want to hear from you. Don't just
Yeah.
them.
Yeah. And
Don't
I've seen
ghost
like, yeah, and like I've seen it, other people present it, almost twisting it on its head. Like, well, by not emailing people, you're actually doing them a disservice because you have really valuable information to share with them. There's a reason why someone signed up to hear from you. And if you're not emailing them, how are you helping them?
Exactly. So with that being said, we talked a little bit about email platforms. I know you work with ConvertKit. I'm familiar with the platform. Is this the only email service provider that you recommend, and why?
No, I mean, honestly, like every time people would ask me, well, why ConvertKit? I never had a really good answer besides like, well, it's the platform I switched to 5 years ago, and therefore I know it really well. So I personally use it, and it's the one I focus on with my clients because I've been on it for so long and I really know it, and I think it's a really robust platform. That said, I do think there's a lot of really great other platforms out there. I've had the experience of helping some people out with ActiveCampaign. I think it's also a really robust platform. It's, in my opinion, has more of a learning curve than ConvertKit. I think figuring out how to use it can feel a little more like where do I begin? I've been experimenting with MailerLite. I think MailerLite also can be a really great platform. I think, though, the best thing to look for in an email platform is, one, is it like something that can grow with your business? So I think a lot of people start on a platform because it's free. And I get it. Like when you're starting a business, you're trying to keep your expenses as low as possible, usually because, you're not making as much money. So you don't, or maybe you're making no money at the beginning. So you want to keep the costs low while you can. But then they find that they very quickly, as their business grows, that their platform isn't really allowing them to do the things that they want them to do.
Right.
So I would say find a platform that you can grow with and not be put off by the cost. I think in the grand scheme of things, what you will pay for an email platform, especially at the beginning when your list is small, is actually pretty minuscule. Like when you look at the overall cost of running a business, an email platform actually, especially at the beginning, doesn't actually cost that much. Right. Now, it can feel like a lot when if you're trying to really minimize your expenses, but then when you look at the bigger picture, like, oh, this isn't actually that big of an expense. And I would also find a platform that fits with other platforms that you're using. And what I mean by that is, so for example, with ConvertKit, it's really geared towards people who sell like digital products and coaches. It's not really set up for people who sell, in my opinion, physical products, which is a problem I ran into when I first switched to it, because I was in this, I was selling my jewelry, but I was also very much in the blogger world. So a lot of bloggers I followed used it. And I think it's great for that. It was not a good fit for selling physical products. So I wouldn't recommend that to someone who sells physical products. And I know for people who are in who sell, people may have to make a lot of appointments, like reoccurring appointments. So for example, if you are like a coach, like an exercise coach, for like not coming the right word, and you have people, or let's say like an in-person yoga instructor, and you have I know there's platforms that fit better with that than, for example, ConvertKit probably does. So, well, yes, I use ConvertKit. I don't think it's like use this or you're screwed. It's you find the platform that works for you.
Yep. Absolutely. Well, I like that though, like that there's expertise in a particular platform, because people that are looking to get started on that platform or switch to that platform, there's an expert that can help you through the process, which I think is really cool. But you also have expertise in other platforms, like you said. So I'm a fan of niching down. So anything that I'm an expert, I know this backwards and forwards, I can tell you, 6 different ways to do one thing. It's always helpful in business to have someone like that in your corner. So I just wanted to raise that up because I think it's cool. Um, so you talked about linking different platforms together. What are some, I guess, in your experience or in working with people that you normally work with, coaches and solopreneurs, what are some platforms that you typically would link together?
Yeah. So I have, for example, one coach or one client, she's not a coach, one client who uses Teachable.
Mm,
So if you're unfamiliar with Teachable, it's a platform that allows you to create online courses. And Teachable is one of those platforms that integrates really well with ConvertKit. Now I know they integrate really well with a bunch of other platforms, but I will give the example of there are some email platforms, for example, that don't have a natural integration with something like Teachable. So you'd have to use something, a third party plugin, not plugin, like platform called like Zapier, which if
mhm.
you're not into tech, you want to minimize that as much as possible, because the second you add in a third thing to connect to platforms, it just gets so much more complicated. That said, I've used Zapier for helping connect certain platforms. So, for example, this client who uses Teachable, even though ConvertKit and Teachable connect, like they have a native integration, there was something that she needed help with. That basically, if someone cancels a membership, she wanted an email sent, and there was no natural way to do that. So I had to help her use Zapier to create that kind of
Mm,
integration. So,
yeah.
but anyway, so Teachable, I've used like SendOwl for sending digital products. Like, I mean, I think there's got to be hundreds of other platforms that ConvertKit integrates with, and it's hard to like name all of them.
Awesome. So with that being said, you kind of got into a little bit, but what is it like to work with you? Like, what does that
Yeah.
process look like?
Yeah, so I have kind of a couple different ways that people work with me. So one is they've got their ConvertKit accounts set up, things are automated, but they need help kind of fixing things up. I think, especially as our businesses grow, it's very easy within our email automations for things to get messy very quickly. And you want to make sure things are as streamlined as possible. So, part of what I do is helping to clean things up, make sure that, if someone signs up for something, then they don't somehow get pulled into a couple automations and then suddenly a subscriber is getting like 3 or 4 emails at the same time, because we want to avoid that as much as possible, because that will annoy people. Um, so that's part of what I do, is kind of helping clean things up, or they need a new automation set up. So I'll help them with that. So the process for working is, I want to make sure we're a good fit for each other. So we usually have a little chat on video so we can get to know each other. And then if they decide to hire me, I go into their ConvertKit account. And the other thing is, you want to make sure, there's a lot, you want to make sure there's some trust there, because I can see everyone's, if you have an email platform, you've got all those people on your list, and you want to trust that you're hiring someone who's going to take care of those people on your list and not just cause mayhem and start emailing people. And part of what I do too is I want people to feel empowered to use their platform. So I like to create videos of the back end, and not just do the thing that they asked me to, but explain how I set it up, why I set it up that way, and if they want to make any changes, what they can do moving forward. So that's one way I work with clients. It's just kind of like, I've got my ConvertKit account set up, I need some help with stuff, or this thing isn't working, I need someone to help me figure that out. The other way I work with people is if they are kind of they've switched over, or they're in the process of switching over, and they just need everything set up soup to nuts. So I do a VIP day where we make sure that everything works from, that opt-in form all the way through a welcome sequence. So setting up all the flows and making sure any other platforms that you're on are fully integrated so that everything's running smoothly.
Awesome. And I love that you do the videos to like explain like what you're doing, and so people can go back and do it themselves. I definitely recommend my clients like know what people are doing for you, even though
Yeah.
you're asking for a done for you situation. It's still important to know, because sometimes you do have to go in there and make last minute changes. I think it's so
Mm-hmm.
helpful so that you can also be empowered as well. So love that.
Yeah. And I'm just I'm listening, but I'm playing on my computer. I'm like, oh my goodness, my battery's about to die.
Gonna die. See, this is live. This is what happens
I
live.
know.
Great.
I was like, oh, I have tons of battery. And I'm like, I just got that notification. I don't have enough battery.
So what advice would you give entrepreneurs who are maybe hesitating and starting to build their email list?
Yeah. So I would say that, again, it kind of goes back to what I was saying with the social media. Like, you could have a really big following on social media and say, I don't need an email list, or I've got nothing to email people about. But you always want to have access to that information to be able to directly reach out to people, so that in the event that something happens and you can't get access to your social media platform, you still have the list. So, and the other thing I would say is, even if you're not sold yet on the idea of emailing people, at the very least, you can find a way to start collecting people's email addresses with their permission, of course, so that when you do feel ready, they're there. And I think, again, like, that sense of like, well, when am I going to email people? And I think once you get into the habit of doing email marketing, you start to realize there's so much you can say, or so much valuable information you can share. Just like there's tons of information you can share on social media. You can even take that and maybe give that into an email, but like maybe give a little more personalized touch. Like, I kind of look at social media as like, it's typically a wider audience. So you're sharing a little bit of behind the scenes, but that email, it's more of like you're having a more direct conversation with someone.
Mm-hmm. Yep, absolutely. Like, it's like I liken it to, I tell my clients, like, getting to know your brand community and them getting to know you. Like, I like to have conversations in my emails. So like asking questions, and, people do respond, which is, it's always surprising. It's like, oh, I talked to this person maybe a couple months ago and they give me an update on something, or they just, just want to pop in my inbox and just say, hey, or, whatever.
Yeah.
It's nice to hear from them and to really build that relationship. So
I agree.
there is a lot that you can say. So I'm definitely in that school of thought. So for entrepreneurs who are like just getting started, and I get this question a lot, with email marketing, where would you tell them to start in terms of like trying to choose an email vendor, content? Like, what's the first thing they should do before anything else?
Yeah. Well, I think picking out which platform can certainly feel really daunting. I think somehow, no matter what stage you're at in business, whenever you're at the part where you're like, okay, I want to level up, then we get bogged down by the tech, and not so much figuring out the tech, but just figuring out which tech to use. And you're like, so my suggestion would be, I would look around and get a feel for what people in your industry are using.
Mm-hmm.
Because then you can get a better sense if that might be a good fit. So I've seen, like, in a lot of Facebook groups I'm in for entrepreneurs, people ask, like, what do you recommend? Like, what email platform do you use? And kind of look through what people are sharing about why they use it. Mm-hmm. So that would be one thing. The other thing to look at is, again, does it allow you to do the things you need to do? If you're selling a digital product, will it allow you to naturally, does it integrate easily with that platform that you're on? If you need people to be able to make appointments and then have that information stored in your email platform, is there a natural way to do that? Like, it really looking at what it is your business offers, and does the platform work for you? But the other thing is, I would say, don't overthink it. It's really easy to get just stuck and like worrying that you're going to make the wrong choice. Because the thing is, while it can be kind of a hassle to switch platforms, people do it all the time. And a lot of these platforms, it's in their interest to get you to switch onto it. So they want to make it as seamless as possible for you.
Exactly. Well said. So do you have any particular person that inspires you or advice that you live by as an entrepreneur?
Yeah. So I would say that part of what got me into email marketing was I took a course last year with Kate Doster. So she has a podcast called Inbox Besties. It's all about like email marketing, but she does the content part. And I love her attitude about email marketing. Like her motto is, and she tells everyone like being on my email list is a privilege. And I really love that way of looking at email marketing. That, and it goes back to what I said earlier about like the unsubscribers. Like, you don't want to be here? That's fine. Like, go find somebody else. And not to take it so personally that like you being here is a privilege for both of us. Like, I just really like that attitude because I think so much of us get so like kind of deer in the headlights when it comes to email and sending people emails out and worrying, are we going to annoy people? Are we going to offend someone? And then if you do get an email or someone like chews you out, because I've certainly had that happen, like realizing, you know what, we're not a good fit anyway, and that's totally fine.
Mm-hmm. Exactly. So as entrepreneurs, we go through a lot of stuff, a lot of obstacles. What do you feel like is the most difficult obstacle that you faced in your entrepreneurship journey?
Yeah. I would have to say it was, I think, making that decision to step away from my jewelry business because it was my baby. I mean, it was how I entered the world of entrepreneurship.
Mm-hmm.
And I feel like in my head, I had built up this identity around it. If I'm not selling my handmade jewelry, then what am I now? Like I think a lot of, people would come, my friends would come to me, people in my community knew me as a jewelry designer. And while a lot of those people might not fully understand what it is I do now, like when I finally came to that realization, like I'm not defined by what I'm doing in the moment and I can change what I do. I think it kind of opened up a lot of space to be like, okay, like it's okay. And just because I started out with that doesn't mean like there's anything wrong with me or I'm a bad business owner or that like I've somehow lost my identity. It's just a shifted identity.
Exactly. Yes. And lastly, tell us, what new projects are you working on?
Oh, I'm so glad you asked because I feel like I've spent this entire day in front of my microphone because I'm actually in the process of creating a small video course specific to ConvertKit. And it's called Convert and Connect Blueprint. So I spent all of today recording the videos for that. So that will come out probably late September is when it's going to release.
Awesome. We're always in the lab. We're always at work.
Oh my God, yes.
Love to add that. And you have a freebie, right? What's your freebie?
So it's called ConvertKit Opt-in Cheat Sheet. So again, I'm all about ConvertKit. At least that's where I'm at this phase of my business ownership. And it's all about how to use ConvertKit to create a welcoming flow for new subscribers, but specifically looking at the tech piece of it.
Awesome. Well, this time I want to pause for questions just in case anybody watching had questions for Bev. I don't see any questions in the chat, so I'm going to make sure before we wrap. And while we're waiting, Bev, can you tell the listeners how they can contact you, how they can get more information? So drop all the websites, all the social handles. How can we get in touch with you?
Yes. So, well, I should mention that opt-in I just mentioned, you can get it at yourpersonaltechfairy.com/guide. And obviously, my website is yourpersonaltechfairy.com. I'm also pretty active on Instagram. I think that's how we first connected, actually. Crystal was through Instagram. So you can find me on Instagram at your.personaltechfairy.
Awesome. All right. Well, I don't see any questions coming in. So for more information on Bev, contact and connect with her. You click on the link in the show notes for this episode. This is episode 62. And you can get access to the show notes at isimplyshi.com/podcast. Again, that's isimplyshi.com/podcast. And if you'd like to join a collective of women dedicated to being empowered and becoming the best version of themselves, join the She Army Facebook community, and that link is also in the show notes. So guys, I hope you found what Bev has shared today has been extremely helpful. Remember, you too can conquer if you slay hard every day. And thanks so much, Bev, for being on the show.
Thanks, Crystal.
Awesome.